going on, everybody? It's your brother Al.
And Roz.
Welcome to Talk Tuesday, YouTube edition. Today we're going to be discussing about marriage versus social media. Social media quickly has become part of the top 5 reasons for divorce. People are on social media and losing their rapid minds.
Just on there too much.
Doing too much. It's destroying marriages, families. It is messing up relationships. Now, granted, social media in itself isn't anything bad about it. And actually, there are some good benefits about using social media. You can make a connection, you can network, promote your business, promote your ministry.
Yep.
There are some good things that can happen via social media.
Right, but there are, just for every good thing that can come along with social media, there's something bad that can come along with social media.
And we understand that the word tells us that out of the heart flows the issues of life.
And I think one of the biggest things, or one of the biggest issues also, is the Bible also tells us that we should do things in moderation. And I think sometimes we can utilize social media and it's out of moderation. It's too much.
It's too much.
Yeah.
And so research tells us we at least check our social media accounts at least 17 times a day.
For about 10 minutes each time we check it. And
Right.
sometimes more. That's just the average.
That is actually the least amount.
Yeah, that's the low end.
That's the low end. So we want to make sure that as we are engaging in social media, and especially because we're talking about marriages, if you want a healthy, happy, thriving marriage, we have to use discipline when it comes to social media.
Absolutely.
And also another thing, along with discipline, you and your spouse, you guys have to sit down and establish boundaries.
And you have to use discipline. Have to make sure that you discipline yourself when you're utilizing social media.
Exactly. So with that being said, we're going to talk about some things concerning social media and relationships. And we need to understand this, that our marriage is the most important relationship.
Right.
The marriage relationship is priority.
More than these virtual relationships that we're forming online.
Exactly. You have to be, that has to be, I think because now we have social media that we have to discuss, we need to sit down, couples need to sit down before the altar, before the wedding day.
And discuss how you're going to handle
social media.
Yeah.
Are
we going to have each other's passwords?
Yeah. Are we going to do that? Are we going to, how much are we going to engage into social media?
And I think that even goes past just social media, but even phones. Are you going to have your spouse's password to their phone, to their email, to other social media accounts, not just Facebook, but Instagram or whatever else
Twitter.
that's out there.
The whole nine. So we want to make sure that we are being diligent about protecting our marriages. All right. And so one thing that is important when you're establishing your marriage as a priority and the marriage relationship as a priority, you got to understand that quantity and quality is important.
Right.
It's not just about quality, but it's about quantity and quality.
Right.
And you want to make sure, because those are essential to communication.
Right.
And it's through communication that we maintain the priority of our marriages. All right. So we want to understand that. All right. So now the question that you need to ask yourself is social media controlling my time? Are we investing too much time in something that cannot give us a return?
Oh, that's good.
Are we investing social media, over the marriage relationship? Are we investing more time scrolling? Or are we investing time actually sitting down talking to our spouses?
Investing the time in something that can actually produce. Your marriage can produce something, but social media.
Right. I mean, when we're talking about marriage,
Right.
when we're talking about making sure that relationship is priority, then you have to make a decision to invest in your marriage.
Right.
If you want,
put the time into your marriage.
That's if you want a healthy, happy, thriving marriage.
And so often we see couples out on a date, and they are on their phones, on social media, not like business or anything like that, but on social media.
Right.
And so I think we have to be mindful when we are trying to connect and build with our spouses, that we are not taking what belongs to them and giving it over to social media. We got to make sure that our attention is on them, because I mean, to be quite honest with you, it's rude to be on your phone while you're supposed to be out on a date with your spouse.
Spending time with them, spending quality and quantity time with them, all right? And so then you have to be careful when it comes to social media. You have to be careful of the subjects and the topics that are being displayed on your timeline. You have to be careful, because your timeline doesn't just represent you.
Right.
It doesn't just represent me individually,
right,
but my timeline represents my family,
right,
and because I am a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ, it represents him as well.
Right.
So we have to
keep it clean.
You got to keep it clean. You got to keep it pure.
Keep it respectful.
Oh yeah, you have to. And I understand that even with Facebook, you know, people can share things on your timeline. Well, it's your responsibility at that point. If they're sharing questionable content that could cause a disagreement between you and your spouse, then you have every right to unfollow them.
Exactly. It's your Facebook page. You can do whatever you want to do.
Exactly. And so you say, well, I may not want to unfriend them, you know, but you have the right to unfollow them.
Right.
So, because again, it is our responsibility to secure our marriage.
Right.
And it is our responsibility to protect and guard our hearts.
And I don't know if you're going to talk about this or not later. And if you are, then you can definitely stop me. But even in that content, make sure that the content represents you and your spouse. Are you going to talk about that later?
No, that's good. This is it.
You know, we're talking about the content and making sure that the content, you know, represents you and your spouse well. And sometimes we know that, like you said, somebody can put something questionable, tag you in it or whatever.
Right.
But we also realize that we need to make sure that we're representing our marriages. If you're going to post pictures, then people need to see you being engaged with your family, with your spouse. If all they see are pictures of you, you know,
like almost seeing pictures of you almost living like a single life,
and then your status says it's blank, it doesn't say if you're married, or it doesn't
or say complicated.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's like you are now portraying something, and you open the door, and so now you wonder why people inboxing you. Well, they didn't. And not to say that that's going to deter people, deter. It ain't going to stop folks from, you know, inboxing you or whatever. But you at least need to give them all the information. And then if they inbox you from there, you know they just being outright disrespectful.
Right, baby. Right. And so that's good. So be careful of your content, because your content not only represents you, it represents your marriage, it represents your family, and if you are a believer, it represents God as well.
Right.
All right. And so the next thing that we need to be careful of concerning social media is to friend or follow or like. You have to be careful of who you friend. You have to be careful who you follow.
You got to be careful what pictures you like.
Yeah, you have to in a marriage. You know, and you say, well, we have a secure marriage and we're not, you know, this and the other. But again, you have to, what you friend, follow, or like is really, you're giving, what is it? You're a thumbs up to it.
Right, exactly.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you want to be careful, especially when you're dealing in a marriage, because again, it is our jobs to protect and secure our own marriage.
And we have to realize that when you are single, you can do what you want to do. You can friend who you want to friend. You can follow who you want to follow. You can like what you want to like when you're in your singleness. But we have to understand that when we get married, we leave our singleness behind, and we now have to embrace our oneness with our spouse.
Yes.
And so now it's not just about you, but you have to now be mindful of your spouse.
Right.
And one of the things that I like to use as a rule of thumb is, would I be upset if you did it? Would I be upset if you liked that? Would I be upset if you were friends with you know, somebody? So I always ask myself that as a rule of thumb, and if I would be, then I wouldn't, you know, I stay away from it.
Yeah.
So I think we have to make sure that we are no longer walking in that single mindset, single, but you're married, right? You have to now embrace that oneness with your spouse and take into consideration how they might feel.
And so what you need to do is you need to make sure that you guys discuss, sit down and talk about the expectations of social media. Do you want me following, or do you want me liking my ex's pictures? Do you want me to
Is
be
that gonna bother you?
you know, is that going to bother you? That has to be taken into consideration
Yeah.
because we're wanting to secure
Right.
our relationship.
Right.
We want to make sure that we're healthy, happy, and thriving.
Right.
And so in order to do that, we have to be willing to break or cut off virtual relationships to establish and build the real relationship.
That's good, babe.
All right.
That's good.
And so then lastly, you want to make sure that you are avoiding secrecy. You know, when your spouse walk in the room and you doing something on social media, you got to minimize it, change pages and do all that stuff. That's just too much work.
Yeah, it is.
That's too much work. If you do right, you don't have to do all that work.
Right. And if you do that, then you are setting yourself up to deal with the insecure spouse. Because eventually that's gonna, you know, they may be like, oh, it don't matter at first, but at some point that's gonna become a problem.
Because if you're spending all of your time on social media and not giving that time to your spouse,
right,
anybody would question it.
Yeah. And so you have to make sure that you are that you're establishing that security for them.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that you can do. So one of the things, you know, that you can do in that is offer your password. You know, your spouse may not even want it. They may not have asked you for it. But if they ask you for it, you should definitely give it to them.
Right.
But it should always be known that it is always available. And I think, again, that's not something that's written, but it works.
It works.
It works regardless to whether or not you want it or not, just to know that it's available. And what you said something earlier when we were talking about how even the spouse that's giving over the information, it creates a sense of accountability for that person.
It does. And you see, we got to understand that secrecy undermines accountability. And it undermines accountability. It undermines transparency.
Yeah.
And so we want to be transparent with each other,
Right.
because transparency now establishes trust.
Yes, it does.
And so you want to stay away from secrecy, anything that can undermine that, because again, we're building secure relationships.
Right. And secrecy breeds insecure people.
It does. I mean, it comes along with it. If there are secrets, if you know, every time your spouse come in the room, you trying to get off this or you trying to block their view.
Or they ask you for your phone, and then you say, oh, well, wait a minute, because you're trying to delete stuff off before they can get to you.
Yeah,
know.
man. Now you're building insecurity.
Yeah.
And you're promoting insecurity. And so now you're wondering why your marriage isn't thriving.
Right.
All right. So we have to make sure when it comes to social media that we're being transparent.
Yeah.
And that we call an all access granted policy. I want Roz to know everything about my social media. I want her to have all access to it, so that again she'll be secure and we'll be good. So even if there comes a question,
Right.
even if a question arises, she now has the freedom.
Yeah.
And she has the knowledge that says, nah, that's not true.
Right.
Because I have access to that.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and so you want to make sure you're doing that. All right. So now we're going to ask you to do this. We're going to ask you to keep it 100 with yourself. Keep it 100 with yourself. All right. 100. So you got to answer these questions. When dealing with the opposite sex on social media. Number one, are you discussing spouse only topics or material? Are you discussing spouse only topics or material when dealing with the opposite sex on social media? If you are, you are on dangerous ground, because what you're doing is you're establishing an emotional connection. And you're on social media. All right, so you want to be careful. So if you answered yes to that, you're on dangerous ground.
Yeah.
Number two, you need to ask yourself this: are you daydreaming about them?
You saw that picture and you just can't get her out of your mind, or you can't get him off of your mind.
Yeah. You now looked at social media. Now you at work. All you're doing is meditating. You're meditating on what you've seen on social media.
Yeah.
You're in a dangerous position, because here's what the Bible says: as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So if you're meditating and daydreaming on somebody that is not your spouse, you're going to walk in that. Your actions,
eventually the opportunity
and your actions are going to follow what you've been meditating
Absolutely.
on. All right. So that's dangerous ground.
Yep.
Number three, you need to ask yourself this: Do you look for reasons to visit them online?
Yeah, you see them comment on somebody's stuff, on somebody
Now,
else's post.
now you trying to start a
You're
conversation.
trying to start a conversation on somebody else's post.
Right. Or you're looking for reasons, or you see that there's a concert going on,
right,
and you trying to see if they're going to be at the concert, and
right,
you trying to hook, you trying to hook up.
So just anything, just reaching for something.
On dangerous ground.
Yeah.
That's on dangerous ground. And again, that's really an emotional connection. And what follows an emotional connection is physical connection. So you have to be careful, because it's dangerous to get emotionally attached to somebody that is not your spouse. All right. Number 4, you need to ask yourself this question: are you more intimate with them than with your spouse?
And what that means is, a lot of times we think about intimacy, and we think intimacy is just the physical act of intimacy, but intimacy is also sharing
hopes,
deep,
dreams,
deep information, your feelings and
your
aspirations,
past,
your passion.
Yeah,
with people.
So that's real intimacy.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we think about intimacy, we only think physical.
Physical, right?
Nah, we're talking about that emotional intimacy, that sharing of stuff. And now, if you're sharing stuff with somebody that is not your spouse, you are setting yourself up for failure. You are saying, if you're being intimate with somebody, and you like just with them, and you disclosing information, man, that is a dangerous spot to be in. I watch ID channel, y'all. I watch ID channel and ID channel. Them folks that get emotionally attached, now they done plotted to kill their spouse and take the insurance money and live together.
Right.
Nah, man, you want to
passport and
everything. Oh no. So you want to make sure that you're only being intimate emotionally and physically with your spouse. All right. And the 5th question is, do you feel they get you better than your spouse?
Oh, they just get me. They get me.
They understand me.
Yeah.
My wife just doesn't understand me anymore. Well, you know why they don't understand you anymore?
Because you're too busy being intimate with the other person.
There you go. How can they understand you when you won't share yourself with them?
Exactly. That's good.
You see, you're too busy sharing yourself with somebody,
giving somebody else what belongs to your spouse. Yeah.
So how can they understand? You can't understand something that doesn't make sense, and it does not make sense for you to go and connect with somebody else when you're supposed to leave, cleave, and become one. You're
supposed to
connect with your spouse.
Yeah.
All right. So they can't understand you
Yeah.
because you are too busy connecting with somebody that's not your spouse. So you want to make sure that you ask yourself these 5 questions. If you said yes to any of them, you are on dangerous ground. You're in a bad position.
Yeah.
And so in closing, we want you to know, you do not have to allow social media to become the snake in the garden. You don't have to, in the Garden of Eden, there was the snake. The enemy used the snake to get close to and talk to and to divide.
Yeah.
The first married couple. You see what I'm saying? And to get them kicked out of the presence of God.
Right, and that's exactly what social media can be for us.
If we allow social media, it would become the snake in the garden. Well, it will create a wedge between us. We'll disconnect. And it's
not
hard.
Just from each other, but from Christ as well.
Yeah, we'll disconnect from God. And it's so funny that social media and the internet has really come about to connect people. But through that connecting of people, we've become disconnected.
Yeah.
And we're lacking relationship skills.
Right.
And so we got to be careful.
In a generation where that connection is so available to us.
Yeah,
that's so good.
That's the whole premise of social media and the internet. Is to connect to people around the world.
Right.
But through that connection of people around the world, we've become disconnected.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah, that is that is the travesty, I think, behind social media is that we got to get back connected. If we want healthy, thriving marriages, we have to connect. We have to spend quantity and quality time communicating. We got to share the intimate details with each other. Listen, your marriage is the real relationship.
Yeah.
That is the relationship that counts.
And you should fight for that relationship more than you fight for a virtual or a fantasy type relationship that you have with someone else on social media.
Exactly. So hopefully something was said to encourage you to work on the real relationship that is your marriage, and to work on those family relationships. Do not allow social media to be that Goliath. No, you stay disciplined.
Right.
Stay disciplined and stay connected to your spouse. All right? So hopefully someone said, God bless you. We appreciate you tuning in. Follow us on Facebook, Alfred Warren Jr. or Roz Warren. You can follow us on Facebook. Go to our 2-page, T.W.O, Together with One. We would be glad to meet you there as well.
And we also do a live version of these videos on Facebook every Tuesday at 7:02. So if you are only here, then of course we put these videos here for you to be able to view. But if you would like to view them on the live, as I like to call it, the live, then you can definitely tune in every Tuesday at 7:02 and be a part of that live conversation.
There we go, y'all. So be blessed. We will see you next Tuesday, Lord's will. It's your brother Al.
Roz, stay off that social media.
Peace.
Don't let social media tell you up. Don't do it.